Hello and welcome today to the Brothers Gwyn channel. I am Ed, hello, and I'm going to be today chatting to you about what books you should read after you have read Blood Meridian. Now, whether you enjoyed Blood Meridian or you hated it, it's entirely possible because it is a book that is very, at times, controversial. It has lots and lots of different opinions about it. To me, it's one of my favourite books ever written. It is Cormac McCarthy's magnum opus, and it is a book that I can go to time and time again, and I can find something different from it, something else to mesmerise me, something else to captivate me. And hopefully I can give you a few books here that either you've heard of and you haven't read yet, or you've read and you agree that you should read them after Blood Meridian, or you can find some new books to try out. That's what we're all about on this channel, talking, and today I shall be letting you know what books to read after you have read Blood Meridian. When the Lamb is Lost, they recommend Moby Dick, and today is no exception. Moby Dick is probably the most widely recommended book and one of the greatest inspirations to Cormac McCarthy. Lots of people will recommend it when you're talking about Blood Meridian because of the similarities, the parallels you can draw upon both of the novels. It's an odyssey of death and destruction. It's a hunt that reflects man's desire to dominate that which is about him. The prose is so archaic, it's so almost biblical, much like Blood Meridian. Cormac McCarthy really wanted that similar style to Moby Dick when he was writing Blood Meridian. And it works, it definitely works. It feels as if you are in a completely different world to the 21st century or the 20th century when it was written in the 80s and the late 70s. And Moby Dick focuses on a group of marauders descending into the unknown for the purpose of murder, much akin to Blood Meridian, as in the scalp hunters, very similar to the harpoon whale hunters. So Moby Dick is a book, I haven't read it since school. I'm going to be rereading it this month or hopefully next month and getting into it again, especially with the amount of times I've read Blood Meridian. I watched the Harvard, or was it Yale? Can't remember now. Lectures on Blood Meridian on YouTube, and they were great, drawing the parallels between Moby Dick and Blood Meridian. So that is the #1 book to recommend. The next book I have to talk about is The Sun by Philip Meyer. This book is one of my favourite books. After I read Blood Meridian, I then did some research, and this is another book that was so widely recommended. The Sun by Philip Meyer is a story of 3 generations, and it is essentially the story of Texas. Part of this is set in the same time period as Blood Meridian. Part of it is about 40 or so years later, and then afterwards it is going towards between World War One and World War Two, and it is a remarkable novel. It has the eloquent prose, it has the brutal nature of Blood Meridian, and after I read the brutal Comanche attack in Blood Meridian, I had to go and read The Sun, because 1/3 of this novel takes place where a boy from Texas is then kidnapped by a band of the Comanche, and he is raised and indoctrinated as one of them. And it is a breathtaking journey. It is incredible. If you've read any Westerns, you will know that the trope of kidnapped and then taken into a band of Native Americans is very popular, but none have been done so well, in my opinion, as in The Sun by Philip Meyer. The life of the Comanche just was breathtakingly beautiful at times, and as savage as it seems. It was a brutal world that they all lived in, whether it was, the Native American bands of the Comanche, the Kiowa, the Tonkawa, or the Texas Rangers and, just the settlers of Texas. They all committed such atrocities to each other. There is, no one here is good, no one here is evil. It is all inherently grey, which is, nothing is darker than history is a very common saying, and that is very true here. Philip Meyer did so much research, as like Cormac McCarthy did, and it is a remarkable novel. And I simply had to read this, and I absolutely fell in love with Philip Meyer's storytelling here. If you love Cormac McCarthy's writing, if you love Blood Meridian, if you like the nature of the landscape as if it is a character, then The Sun is something to read. Ironically, the only Cormac McCarthy book to feature on this list is The Crossing, Book 2 of the Border Trilogy by Cormac McCarthy. When I first read this, I've read it twice now. When I first read it, it was kind of middle of the pack for me, but the second time, it really quickly became my second favourite McCarthy novel because of the stark nature. It was mesmerising, and I could see so many similarities in theme to Blood Meridian. and I really got a lot out of The Crossing, and I hope other people will as well. The writing probably in The Crossing is almost McCarthy's most beautiful. You know, sometimes he's very efficient, sometimes he's very bleak, and other times he has this archaic sense of lyrical and poetic prose that evokes so much feeling. You know, his use of similes, metaphors, passive verbs, and you know, the way that the characters speak to each other it's nowhere. It's amazing in Blood Meridian, and then it's incredible in The Crossing. It's just one of my favorite novels by him. The Crossing is set in that familiar Western setting, although it's slightly more modern, and it has many similar things running within it to Blood Meridian. It has this will and this wild sense of dominance by mankind over animals, over other people, over characters, and it has these commentaries on life through a kind of coming-of-age story of Billy Parham, the main character. Much like the kid in Blood Meridian. This is McCarthy's most emotional work to me, and I think after you read this, you will never look at wolves the same. And the fourth book on this list is John Milton's Paradise Lost. This is a necessity to read if you like Blood Meridian. If you love Blood Meridian, if you hate Blood Meridian, read Paradise Lost. It is a classic, it is a book of the ages, and it is just a breathtaking book. Now, John Milton's Satan is as much a model for who Judge Holden is as a character as Ahab is from Moby Dick. Holden seduces the people around him with his words. He uses philosophy and violence and riddles and promises, and he is the one who delivers these powerful, at times motivating, at other times terrifying monologues. All eyes are upon him, much like Satan's character in Paradise Lost. He is extremely charismatic, so charismatic in fact that John Milton was then shunned after he wrote this as being someone of the devil. I believe William Blake said that, but I'm not 100% certain. But Paradise Lost, this again, you've got this archaic sense of prose. It's archaic to us because it was written in the 17th century, and it is just an amazing book of the characters full of life, full of these commentaries. And Milton is a very capable writer. Sometimes I was just absolutely blown away by passages that he was writing. Satan's character is a character that you just simply must read. You know, similar to Anton Chigurh from No Country for Old Men by Cormac McCarthy, is one of the greatest villains of all time. Satan in Paradise Lost is written as one of the greatest villains of all time, and he's very different to the very old sense of Satan. In here he is every bit as cruel, every bit as seductive as he should be. The next one for you to read if you like Blood Meridian is John Williams Butcher's Crossing. Now, this is a masterpiece that really plays, again, on the way that mankind uses everything that is about them for their own gain, as a means to propel themselves, in their eyes, higher in status. And this time it's through the slaughter of the buffalo. The government in the 19th century encouraged people to go out and slay as many buffalo as they could. At the beginning, it started as a means of money making. Lots of people in the cities and in Europe wanted to wear buffalo robes, buffalo skins, buffalo hats, and they wanted ornaments of buffalo because they were such a magnificent creature. And then the government then encouraged people to, as a means of ridding the Native Americans from their land, purge their source of food, which was the buffalo. The buffalo would sustain Native Americans and had sustained them for thousands and thousands of years. And so their aim was to absolutely purge them. Now, here what Williams does perfectly is lure you into a read that you are then propelled into a sort of numb depression alongside the main character. It is almost a coming of age story. We have someone who is almost like the kid here, really, in terms of they are young and they are in a group which they don't really know anything about. Now, the kid is very different to the main character in Butcher's Crossing, because this boy isn't inherently bad. He hasn't got a means for violence. He is a very clever young man, but he wants to then go on this buffalo hunt. And this group descend into this savage butchery just at times for butchery's sake. And the ending is one of the most thought-provoking and remarkable endings I've ever read, and I still think of it to this day, and I read it a few years ago. It's a book that I definitely want to reread soon. Williams is a very capable writer, and I absolutely loved reading Butcher's Crossing, even though you probably don't love it at the time, because it is so bleak and horrifying. The next one for me is a very new release, and it is Like Wolves, Como Lobos, which is by D.A. Vega. This is following a doomed Comanche warrior in the 19th century. We have characters here pulled in webs, in weaves, from Texas Rangers to soldiers to Comanche, and even from the perspective of animals in the country. Cormac McCarthy actually tried to write The Crossing from the perspective of the wolf. But in the end, he and his editor decided to go against it. But D.A. Vega actually does it here, and it is absolutely fantastic. I love the way that D.A. Vega has written Like Wolves. The name is very, very apt. These characters in this world are all like wolves. And as D.A. Vega said himself, they are preying on the weak. They are feeding upon everything in sight, and they are just terrifying. And all of these people, I love the way that they're written is, in my opinion, they're written so well because they have this authenticity to them. They have this almost, to us, alien nature of the characters' morals and values, especially as we live in the 21st century. This book is not written, it feels as if it's written in the period. It doesn't feel as if it's written from the mind of someone in the 21st century with these kind of sense of values and beliefs. But it is written, it's not sugar-coated at all to reflect our everyday living. It is written to show exactly what life was like on the Comanche, Texas border. And it is incredible the way it's written. The violence is horrible, but it is very as real as it gets, really, in my opinion. It was written nowhere near gratuitously. It was written almost like Cormac McCarthy style, really, which is where you are simply an observer seeing what's happening, and there is no excess, really, in terms of the description. It is just stark facts there and there. And I love the way that Vega pulled together all of these different threads. And then by the end, you really get a sense for who the characters are and what they've been through. And it is quite the journey. The next one on this list is Empire of the Summer Moon by S.C. Gwynne. And no, he's not of any relation to us. Or that, maybe, I don't know. You never know, do you? But I've emailed him, but he hasn't replied, so I guess not. But anyway, Empire of the Summer Moon is a non-fiction talking about the Comanche band, focusing on the broad picture of the Comanche, who they were as a people, and then it goes into this very intimate story of Cynthia Ann Parker and her son, the last Comanche chief, Quanah Parker. It is a non-fiction that will captivate you as much as any great fiction would. S.C. Gwynne has a fantastic writer's voice. He really gets into the details, and you will find yourself being absolutely horrified at the savagery, really, of the world of these people in the 19th century. This is as true and real as it gets, and you can see how McCarthy was actually really restrained in his writing of the violence in the American West at times, because this book just shows how horrific it was, and it was horrible. It is at times harrowing and very, it's a grieving read. But it is very, very important to read it, especially if you want to get a feel for what the time was like in the time of Blood Meridian, in the time of the scalp hunters and the Texas Rangers, at the end of the Mexican War, and from the perspective of the Texas peoples, as well as those who associated with the Comanche. We don't know too much about the Comanche because as a people, they didn't write records. We have no way of understanding what people felt like and what they went through thousands of years of history, only from what people have written down. And mostly it's from Anglo settlers, white settlers, what they've seen, but some parts aren't. And there are lots of great details here from perspective of Comanche, which is Really interesting to read, and if you want to pick up a non-fiction, this is the one. Our penultimate book is Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. Now, you might think this is a bit of an out there choice, but because this book is, even though it's set in the 19th century, it's written in the 19th century, it's a classic, it is set in Africa, in the Congo, rather than the American West. But what Heart of Darkness does, in similarity to Blood Meridian, is it has many similar themes and very, very powerful sequences that stay with you a long time. Now, the judge is some sort of apostle of the primal will, and as is the villain in this, Kurtz. And their will is expressed through violence as they ascend to an almost godlike status to those about them. They are well learned. Judge Holden will, regularly quote the classics, and he will always speaks almost in riddles to people with his knowledge as he documents everything as well. Both of them assert this colonial dominance over the natives of the land as well as the other people about them. And I think, as I mentioned, Satan and Ahab were character studies for Judge Holden, as is Kurtz here in many ways. In many ways, they're different people, but in other ways, they are very similar. And as these characters go through an odyssey into the unknown, as in Blood Meridian, they come to see the horrific nature. There is an attack that is almost as brutal as the Comanche attack in Blood Meridian, and in this, there are some fantastic set pieces, some brilliant monologues. Joseph Conrad was a very, very gifted writer, and you can almost feel the landscape being another character, a very dark character at times, as in Blood Meridian. And the last book is, to me, the most essential book to read if you are a Cormac McCarthy fan, if you are a Cormac McCarthy hater. Go and read this book, which is Books Are Made Out of Books by Michael Kruse. Now, Michael Kruse was, I believe, working at a university who had acquired all of Cormac McCarthy's old drafts, his first, second, third drafts of his novels, and they were annotated. This was all written on a typewriter. You have all of these, all of Cormac McCarthy's notes upon them, and here Michael Kruse has gone through every single word, every single detail, and he's found the references. And Cormac McCarthy, he has not said much to the public, but one of his famous quotes is "Books are made out of books," and he indeed read so much before he wrote any novels. The section on Blood Meridian is the thickest part of this book. It's probably, I think, 150 pages of references, and then Michael Kruse goes into such detail as to how Cormac McCarthy used this, whether it's from Beowulf, and it's a line which is, "I will rise from the darkness of war dripping with my enemy's blood." He used that in terms of theme, and he also used that in terms of what Judge Holden says at one point in the novel. Now, that is just one key detail here, and you can see there are lots and lots of things here in this book that is fascinating to read, and you can see really where Blood Meridian gets its influences from. Thank you so much for watching my video on what to read if you have read Blood Meridian and what to read next. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please let me know what books you think people should read if they like Blood Meridian, if they don't like Blood Meridian, which is very possible. But yeah, please let me know. Let me know what I should read as well next. Any books I missed off this list I need to read. Have you read any of these? Have you read Blood Meridian? I'd love to chat to you in the comments. But hopefully I'll see you there. Anyway, truth and courage. Stay safe from the brother, Gwyn.